Hello and welcome to California Calling, brought to you by the California Wine Institute. I'm Damien Jackman, and together with my colleague Justine McGovern, we'd like to welcome you to an hour of California food, wine and lifestyle with some very special friends here in the UK. Now, California is an aspirational place with an incredible natural landscape, fresh and diverse food and wine, and a relaxed, positive attitude to life. The California Wine Institute helps promote the wines made throughout this amazing state, from Sonoma to Santa Barbara, Lodi to Livermore, the Napa Valley and beyond. And over the next hour, we'll pair some of these wines with fantastic food and fashion.
Well, California is calling, so let's see what it has to say. James Martin will be on soon, showing us how to cook shrimp two ways, both with a distinctly California feel. But before James, Clarke, famed wine critic, will ease our next wine buying decision by making us all fall in love with California wines. But first, let's go over to Hackney to find out how a California girl ended up in Hackney and shot to fame overnight as the baker for Prince Harry and Meghan's royal wedding cake.
Hi, I'm Claire Ptak. I have a bakery called Violet in East London, and I'm a California girl actually, but I moved here about 15 years ago and found this crazy building that reminded me so much of California and of Berkeley, where I was working as a pastry chef for Alice Waters at Chez Panisse. I came over here for love originally, and then I started a market stall, and straight away people started to notice that I was doing this sort of California style, and eventually I opened my own bakery. So yeah, it's been a really cool journey. So what I wanted to do today was to show you guys how I do my sort of violet style of icing. So wild violets are something that are so special and so fleeting, and they come at this moment in February when you're feeling like it's the darkest days, and then they just sort of cheer everybody up. And so it just seemed like a really great name for my bakery. And also it became one of our favorite flavors of icing. And so I'm gonna decorate this cake with my violet icing, our signature. Also brings me to my cookbook. This was probably actually my 5th cookbook, but it always feels like my first, because it was about my journey from California to London. It was about my market stall, starting my business, and all the recipes in there are recipes that we bake and we sell at the bakery. And it's very special to me making this book. So yeah, so the violet icing recipe is in the book, and I'm going to show you how we ice a cake, a violet. One of the first things I learned how to make was like chocolate cake and frosting with my mother and grandmother. But what I really learned and fell in love with at Chez Panisse was making ice cream, actually, because we got to use the best of all the seasonal fruits. And I took the technique of making ice cream and applied it to my buttercream, because you can take any fruit. So I've got plums here right now, that's what's in season. And we roast them and we puree them, and then we fold them into our buttercream. And we do that with different fruits throughout the seasons. And so it's a really great way to get that flavor into something that that I could sell at a market stall. So it was an easy thing to do, but also makes beautiful colors, and the flavors are incredible too. So yeah, so I love to do that. But then also we have our signature violet, which comes from a special violet syrup that we get from France, actually. It was so delicious and really, really tastes of violet. So this technique is something that it's something that I just started doing here at the bakery, because I always want cake to look delicious and not be so perfect. And so my buttercream style really comes from this idea of it being sort of natural and loose, organic, and also just to make sort of your mouth water. That's sort of my motivation. But then it became kind of our signature to have these big swoops of icing. And then I got asked, kind of an amazing turn of events, to make Meghan and Harry's wedding cake for their wedding in 2018. And I think one of the things that was so cool to me was that they wanted my style of icing. They really didn't want me to make a perfect kind of traditional wedding cake. Meghan also being from California, Harry being a big advocate of organic growing, they loved what I did, and they just wanted me to do that. So it was such an honor and such an amazing kind of platform to do that on. So yeah, so that's kind of the story of the icing and the lovely couple who now live back in California. So my approach here is just to get all the icing on. You need your buttercream to be really nice and soft. So if it gets cold out, you got to whip it. So in the wintertime here, it's always trickier because it's butter, so it gets firm when it's cold. So I just like put it on like this. It's really great if you have a turntable, but obviously you can do this at home. You can upturn a pot or something, a bowl, and just kind of balance your cake on there. But it's good to have a bit of height. And then I get it all on. And see, I love all this texture. I just think that's so interesting. And then you scrape it off a little bit, try to get it nice and upright, nice 90-degree angle. You can go back if you miss a spot. And the cool part is that like you're making the most of mistakes. So there you go. And actually, I probably won't even do anything else to it. Just a little bit on the top. And then I usually here, we love to decorate with fresh flowers. That's kind of also become another signature of ours. And with the royal wedding cake too, that was like, it was really amazing because Meghan loves peonies, and that's also one of my favorite flowers, and roses. And so we used all those kind of flowers. We always use the seasonal flowers. So we've got the end of the sort of British roses right now. And it was very chez panisse. Alice would always say to us, we'd make these like fruit displays, and she would always say to us, I just want it to look like they've sort of fallen from the angels or fallen from the bush, like onto the plate or onto the bowl, and for it to look very loose and natural. And I really loved that idea. And so I always try to make it look like, you know, the cake was just sort of like caught the flowers as they're falling. It's easy on the eye, and I think it's really kind of magical. So I take the flowers and usually have to open them up a bit more. I always love the centers of the flowers, so I kind of pull away the inter petals. Really beautiful stuff going on inside there, and then you kind of reveal it, and then just pop it in. And then, of course, it's really nice to have the petals just sort of falling too. I love like walking through a garden when like all the flower petals are sort of like falling off the rose bushes. I always think that's so much more beautiful than like a really sort of tight bouquet of roses. So I kind of try to do that with the decorating too. That's actually like a really simple, really quick way to ice a cake. So here at the cafe, we obviously do cakes, and that's what we're known for, but we also are known locally for our lunches and brunches. And I love making really delicious, really simple, savory food here. And we've just applied for our wine license. It's kind of perfect because this delicious Brock wine, this Love Red wine, is like exactly the kind of thing that we would sell here. And so hopefully we get our license and we can sell it because it's the kind of thing I love. And I love that it's from Berkeley. I've always wanted to sell California wines here because there's such amazing European wines, but it's like introducing the California wines to all my customers is like really exciting. And it goes so well with the food that we serve and what we're doing here. So I had this one yesterday, super delish. And I love that it's like this sort of urban wine, which is very much like our little urban bakery here. So I really hope that you guys get to try this soon here at Violet and all the other delicious California wines that we hope to sell. And now we're going to go to Clarke, who actually knows about wine, who's going to talk more about it.
When you think of California, the first images that might come to mind are the sunshine and beaches of San Diego and Los Angeles in the south. And while there are vineyards there, it is when we head up the coast a little to Santa Barbara that we really get into the prized wine-growing regions. Further north, we have the expansive Central Coast and wine towns like Paso Robles and Monterey. San Francisco is certainly the city on the bay, and it is that bay that extends inland to the east to help cool wine regions like Lodi, and even northwards to the lower reaches of the Napa Valley, the most prized wine-growing region of California. where Cabernet Sauvignon is king. If we cross over the mountains from Napa to Sonoma, we find a wonderfully diverse wine region with warm pockets to grow Zinfandel and Cabernet, and cool, wind-swept coastal vineyards where Chardonnay and Pinot Noir thrive. And as you travel north, you find yourself in the deep, iconic redwood forests of Northern California. This really is a state of spectacular diversity. I've chosen 3 wines to taste to show what exciting flavors are available and how affordable they are. And these are all well-distributed wines all around the country, and they just offer you a taster of what you can find nowadays from California, because there are an awful lot of exciting Californian wines out there. You just have to go out and look for them. Right, the first of these wines is called Kendall Jackson Vintners Reserve Chardonnay 2018. Now this was the first rockstar Chardonnay. This is the wine that taught America to drink Chardonnay, and America taught the world to drink Chardonnay. And it's still one of the biggest selling Chardonnays in the world today, and it's been getting better recently. How? Well, not by taking the easy route. The way that they have been doing it is by going to cooler vineyards and by ramping up the sustainability and the energy efficiency in the vineyards and in the winery. Now, one of the things you notice again and again when you visit California is the fog. It sounds bizarre, but it's absolutely fundamental to making great wines in California. You've got these enormous banks of fog that sit offshore, and then they get sucked inland through the river valleys and through the gaps in the coastal mountains, and along with the sea breezes, they cool the vineyards down. Now, good Chardonnay needs cool vineyards, just like the vineyards which grow the grapes for this wine here. Now, half of the grapes here come from chilly Monterey County. 1/3 of the grapes come from chilly Santa Barbara County, and the rest of them come from cool Mendocino and Sonoma. And you add a little bit of barrel fermentation, just a few % of new barrels. You then leave the wine on its lees for 7 months just to add a creaminess, a softness to the wine, and this is what you get. Beautifully honeyed. A tiny bit of vanilla there. Pineapple, melon, a little bit of nuttiness, and a beautiful apple acidity running along the wine. Spot on. Right, now, what's next? Okay, take that one out of the way, bring a new glass in, and what we've got now is a wine called Noble Vines 667 Pinot Noir, and again, it's from Monterey County in California. Now, what these guys have done, they've headed for the cool coast. Just in from Monterey Bay, there's a fabulous stretch of land called the Santa Lucia Highlands, and they're above the valley floor, so they're already getting cooler. They get wind and fog rolling through the vineyards, and that's cooling things down as well. And the vineyards face northeast, away from the sun, and that's cooling the vineyards down as well. And they actually say that this area has got one of the longest ripening periods of any vineyard area in the world. Perfect for Pinot Noir. Well, this is pretty good Pinot. It smells delicious. Absolutely full of flavour. It's ripe, it's deep, but it's not heavy, it's not dense. It's got a flavour more like cherry syrup and slightly sort of strawberry jam, and just a little thin film of vanilla on top of the wine, just soothing it, just giving it a creamy quality. And what this shows is that California can make really nice Pinot Noir at affordable prices. Right, that was very nice. Okay, now the next wine I've got here is called Brazen Old Vine Zinfandel from Lodi. Now, Lodi is one of my favourite vineyard areas in California, but it's not very picturesque. It's flat, it's inland, the vineyards are big, but it makes tremendous wine. And partly this is because the cold breezes from the Pacific, they still sweep up the Sacramento River inland, and Lodi is just on the south side of the riverbanks. Partly it's because the Lodi soils are really suitable, they're quite sandy, and the roots have to go down really, really deep into the ground. And partly it's because the vines are old, and this massively increases the quality of the grapes. Now, we're dealing with the Zinfandel here, and the Zinfandel is often thought of as a uniquely Californian variety. In fact, it comes from Croatia, but the Californians have adopted it as their own. And the vines here are between 40 and 100 years old. And they're sprawling, they're untidy, they're old-fashioned, they're ugly, but they produce beautiful fruit. Lodi grows more different grape varieties than any other region in California, but Zinfandel is its specialty. This smells nice. It's warm, it's sunny, it's spicy. It's like a cauldron of rich, dark fruit and spice. Warms your throat, warms your heart. Delicious. Well, that's 3 very, very different wines from California, all widely available, all affordable.
So this is an amazing dish. I'm going to use the beautiful shrimps, and I'm going to call this sort of shrimp 2 ways, because one of them I'm going to steam in beer, and I'm actually going to serve the other one just grilled, but serve it all with sort of a Californian kimchi. So you get that little bit of spice in there, which I think particularly goes well with the white wine. Yeah. But I think with this one, the key to it is simplicity, really. So normally when you're making kimchi, it takes forever, as you know. You know, that Korean dish, sometimes it's like rocket fuel as well. It can be really, really hot. This is quite straightforward, really, with this one. So I've got some ginger, I've got some garlic, I've got chilies, not too many chilies. Star anise, I think, is the key for this one. We've got sugar, we've got salt, and we've got cabbage. But instead of using that sort of Chinese cabbage, I'm actually going to use this sort of red cabbage, which I think is perfect for it. It's much quicker, much more simple.
It's still pretty challenging to the wine.
Well, the thing about Californian food as a whole, really, there's such a variety north to south, but wherever you go, you get, I think it's that Pan-Asian sort of stuff. You've got, they do like experimenting with different sort of flavours. Maybe it's the healthy side of it, and maybe it's that, they like that sort of Asian-y sort of stuff. But the further south you go, you've got obviously that Mexican border, the mint and the coriander, which I love. Yeah. So
California is a place you think fusion was made for California. Especially, it does look across the Pacific, doesn't it?
Yeah.
And so many of the good influences in places like San Francisco actually come from Asia.
But always buy ginger with a smooth skin, not a wrinkly skin. Wrinkly skin means it's old.
Stop looking at me.
I'm not saying words. And then with ginger,
then you get the knife going.
Yeah, then you get the knife. We're going to chop this all through. So this is a marinade first of all. So in we go with the ginger. I've got a little bit of garlic. Obviously not too much because that affects the vino. So we'll use a little bit of garlic in there. But this is quite a little simple dish. Star anise, I think, is a must in sort of kimchi. So we'll put 1, maybe 2 in there, just a little bit. And then we take some sugar. So very, very simply, we throw the sugar in. We put a decent handful of salt. We put the ginger, the garlic, and the star anise. And then this is where we add our sort of liquid. We put some white wine vinegar. So the white wine vinegar goes in here, and we put rice wine vinegar, because rice wine vinegar is much more milder than white wine vinegar. I saw you looking at vinegar going,
Yeah. Is he ever going to stop pouring?
Yeah. This is a chef cooking, you see. Look, and then that goes in here. And then what we're going to do is bring this to the boil. And while that's coming to the boil, I'm then going to slice the cabbage to go with it. But you've poured yourself a nice glass. What have you got here then?
Well, given that I had a look at this recipe, and I just thought this is a seriously challenging recipe. Kimchi, you're saying it's a sort of gentleman's kimchi.
Well, it's kind of a kimchi. To be honest with you, it's more like our coleslaw. To be honest,
I suspect some kimchis you try to put wine with that, and whatever you put with them, it wouldn't work.
Well, the problem is it's the spice with the kimchi. Yeah. It is that seriously salt. This is not anything like that. It's much lighter, much more fragrant,
and it's the sourness.
Yes,
but anyway, all of this is going to need a wine which has got a reasonable amount of generosity to it, which has got a reasonable amount of self-confidence. It can stand up for itself. Yeah. And I must admit, straight away, I thought Californian Chardonnay is exactly the kind of wine we want, because California Chardonnays, while the rest of the world's Chardonnays have got a bit leaner and a bit thinner, on the whole, California has said, actually, we don't like to drink leaner, thinner Chardonnays. We're going to stick with stuff which has got lots of flavour. So I think this is going to work quite well.
What is the key to a good Chardonnay then? What is it? Is it the weather, or what is it?
I think the crucial thing about Chardonnay is you've got to put the grapes in somewhere fairly cool. And I've chosen a Chardonnay from Monterey Bay. You know Monterey Bay, don't you?
Well, what I think about California, people look at it and go, that coastal highway, and we talk about Monterey and all that sort of stuff, but the food as well, but also the farms that produce that food. It's not just great for wine, but the produce. I remember all around there, Monterey, visiting farms, and particularly south of that, the different fruit farms that you get as well. People think of fruit in Florida or stuff like that, but you get great fruit farms, you get great artichokes farms, and obviously fruit and the grapes. That's the synergy. Lack of frost, I presume, more than anything else.
Lack of frost, because Monterey Bay is cold all the year round, but not cold enough to actually let the frosts happen. So all the way up Monterey Bay and the Salinas Valley, that's the great valley which Steinbeck's East of Eden was all about, the Salinas Valley there. It's called the sort of the salad bowl of America. Yeah. It's an astonishingly fertile place.
So we're just going to take this cabbage, look. Little pinch of salt.
Little pinch of salt.
Yeah, we have to draw out the moisture, Oz. You know, this is the thing that, I create food that goes with your wine. This requires a little bit of salt to draw out the moisture, because what you want to do is get rid of the salt as well as the water when we wash it off in a minute. That's going to take 3 or 4 minutes.
Yeah, anyway, but I also know that
I'll just wash it off now. I can see you looking at me going...
When I'm cooking at home, James, with red cabbage, I would not wear a yellow shirt.
Yeah, but look, I've washed this off, and all you're doing is and you can see it just softens up the cabbage just a little bit. So all we're going to do, and then what we do is take all this. Once you've infused it all, then we grab our mixture and pour that on there.
God, I'd almost forgotten about that mixture.
And I'm just going to leave that now, all right?
Yeah.
Just going to leave that for a little bit. So that's going to go in there.
And the smell is just beginning to come across the room towards me, and the poor old wine is thinking, am I up for this or not?
It will be. Look, you just mix all this lot together. It's a simple little dish that when you taste it, it's amazing. Yeah. And you've got this nice little bit. So this is partly the dressing, and we just leave that in there for a little bit. This is such a great dish. It's so simple. Just even this. If you didn't want to do any of this sort of cabbagey sort of thing, just do this. Literally, beer. American beer. Not an American lager, not American bitter, just American beer. Ale, they call it. Is there?
Yeah.
Ale? Yeah. That goes on here. And then all you do is you take your shrimp, and we put our shrimp in here. Nothing else. Just literally steamed in beer. Now these are beautiful sort of small shrimp. You buy shrimp by number. So these are about, like oysters. These are 16s to 18s. And then what we do with the other shrimp, when we grill these, and I think this is the great thing about this, is you just grill these on the barbecue. You don't need to put any oil on it, no salt and pepper, nothing. You just literally keep them in the shell and pop them straight on the barbecue. Don't split them open. These are far too small. You don't need to split them open if they're bigger. But these just go straight on the barbecue like that. And the shell keeps the nice little sweetness in there of the nice shrimp.
Nice cold water running right the way down California. Cold water makes much better seafood, and all that sweetness and that crispness.
But I mean, when you think about American food in general, people always say it's burgers, it's pretzels, it's donuts.
There is so much more. I did a trip right the way across. I was quite fortunate. I've done north to south of California. I've done right across America. But the quality of the cooking, I've had the greatest meals of my entire life in California. There's a place called the Single Thread, and it's just unbelievable. And I do a dish with beef in a second with that as well. But that whole area, from Napa right the way down, and you get such a variety of food. So you get that San Francisco, that amazing rich culture of the Chinese and amazing restaurants there. You mentioned the seafood, and then when you venture further down, you get the different sort of veg, the fruit, that kind of stuff. You've got obviously the richness of LA and Beverly Hills and the restaurants and that kind of stuff. But then when you go south, you get this kind of sort of almost Mexican theme into it as well. It's quite a great mix.
I think that when you look at the cultures that have come to California, just about every single culture in the world has been attracted. All those European cultures that came across as long ago as the gold rush.
We're going to make this salad now. This is really simple. So you've got your cabbage like that, and literally you just lift this out. And you leave the sort of the marinade into it behind, and you can see this softens it up. The volume's dropped. It's got that. It's lost a little bit of its crunch, but it's still got its bite. Yeah. Now we're going to put in a few things which I know you would love as well. We've got a little bit of the seaweed. So this is the seaweed. You can buy this dried. You just reconstitute it in water. But look, we just cut a nice little bit of shrimp, and just fold these over. And you see very, very quickly they cook. But also the great thing about this, no salt, no pepper, no oil. The minute you put oil on it, it just creates flames and they're just going to burn. We're just going to leave those cooking. Our prawns are nearly there. And then we can add things, and then this is what I love about sort of this dish. This is that sort of Mexican influence. You've got the mint, and we've got the coriander. And don't be scared with this sort of stuff as well.
I know. I've just seen these wonderful great bunches. When you go in a supermarket, you see these tiny plastic packets, and you sort of think, I need about 4 of those to make this dish.
Yeah, and that's just in the supermarket.
And that's one of the nice things about, say, the Sonoma area of California, just north of San Francisco. It is packed with good produce from the sea and from orchards and from gardens. And so you shove that with the wine. It's one of the most perfect combinations between food and wine that the world has got.
Then we've got lime zest, lime juice going in there as well. So a little bit of lime zest, lime juice. And this is kind of like your salt and pepper. So there's no real seasoning in here. You've got the salt in there anyway. But you've got lime juice and lime zest. And put plenty in as well. So a good squeeze of this. The shrimp are now ready. We can turn this off. But look at that.
Oh, transformed.
Look at that, a beer facial. I just remember having this. I remember sat on the seafront in San Francisco on the pier there, and it arrived in a pan like this with a steamer like this, and you just lifted the lid, and you got this amazing smell from it as well. Fresh shrimp, steamed in a little bit of beer. I think it's just a wonderful, wonderful thing. Whether you just do that on its own, or like I say, in a nice little salad with this, I just think it's great.
And the more you've been working on that kimchi, the more friendly it's become.
The more friendly it's become.
Was
it anti before?
I thought it was looking a bit anti before. Right. Now it's looking friendlier and friendlier and friendlier.
So you've gone from anti to friendly.
Yeah,
so,
I have.
So literally you just put lime. That's the key to it. A little bit of citrus, but not lemon. Keep that sort of Mexican-y sort of theme. Lime, coriander, mint going in here as well. Like I said, it's not the sort of traditional kimchi by any means. That would be fermented and left for months. This is something much, much different and much lighter. Mix this all together. Now, because we've got the salt in there, the only thing we've got to do now is put a little bit of black pepper in. So a touch of seasoning. So black pepper. Again, nothing on the prawns, nothing on, it's just all the flavours relying on with this salad. Give this a mix together so you get all these ingredients in. Your lime, your mint and everything else. And then it's just about ready to serve. See, you take a great big, this is California. So, there's two things in California. You either go big or you go tiny.
Yeah,
there's no in between.
Big.
So I'm going big for this one, look. And you take your lovely salad. Look at the colour of this. Like that. Now the seaweed is totally optional as well. You don't have to do it, but it's just a great combination of different flavours. And then you can take your shrimp, and then this is where we use a different variety of shrimp. You've got the steamed ones, which are in here, and you've got your char grilled ones.
Which are going to be sweeter.
Which are going to be slightly sweeter. So you've got the two different types, the griddled ones and the steamed ones, like that. So a few bits of those on. And then what we could do is finally, because we're nearly there, you take a bit of sour cream, because this gives this lovely creaminess to this and brings it all, think of it like a little dressing, but just a little bit of sour cream. Take some fresh mint and fresh coriander over the top. And then, because it's a little chefy thing, you'll be used to this, won't you? Chefs have just got to go a little bit of olive oil, because the Californians do produce some olive oil as well.
Very good.
Very, very good olive oil.
Honestly, you're going to give kimchi a good name if you go on like this.
Well, I don't. It's my version. It's a Californian kimchi, but there you have it.
That was a little bit of olive oil, was it?
Well, it's just look, Oz, it
The
makes
word
a dressing.
a little seems coming out of your mouth. I should know you well enough by
Precisely.
now. A
I
little
did
means
say go
really
big
well.
or go small or go home.
Go big.
That's it. Go big or go home. But there you have it. My sort of Californian-inspired Californian kimchi with sour cream, char grilled prawns, but don't forget steamed prawns in beer. Cheers, fella.
Cheers.
Gosh, I can't wait to try and make this. Right, we're already halfway through. What have we got coming up? We'll be back with James towards the end of the show, finding out how to grill beef like a professional. Oz talks icons, Ridge, Schramsberg and Silver. So stay tuned to learn more about some of California's greatest wines. But before we do, let's meet Kat Farmer of BBC's You Are What You Wear and Instagram fame with her account Does My Bum Look 40? Kat is pairing 3 cool California wines with 3 style icons from California.
Justine, thank you very much for that. Yes, my name is Kat Farmer and I am here to talk to you about fashion, Californian style fashion. What I'm going to be doing is pairing 3 of my favourite Californian icons with 3 Californian wines. First up, we are talking one of my favourite characters from Big Little Lies, the amazing Zoe Kravitz. Now, she is maybe not what you would think of about California. I am channeling her vibe definitely today. It's all about the boho. She is laid back, she is calm, she is sophisticated, she's all about the texture, she's all about the vintage vibe. And that's really easy to achieve, both on the high street that we have at the minute, but also actually shopping in vintage shops. The key to nailing the boho vintage look is to not be afraid to mix your patterns, to mix your textures, to mix your fabrics. Velvet, good old school polyester, a little bit of vintage always goes a very, very, very long way. The other area that you can also look at is leather. The leather jacket will be your savior. It goes over skirts, it goes over tops, it goes over dresses. It really does just add that laid back boho dimension. Now, when it comes to wine, I reckon that Zoe is very much a rosé. The bread and butter rosé is, I think, just exactly the sort of drink she and her mates from Big Little Lies, that's what they would be drinking in California. Sophisticated, yet cool, yet very, very, very laid back. Definitely one for them. Californian icon number 2 has to be Jennifer Aniston. I mean, who would not love to look like Jennifer Aniston every single day of the year? And I've got some pretty easy tips on how to do that. She is all about the laid back. She is about the sophisticated, yet there is still a hint of something relaxed about her. She never looks overly done. You can achieve that look with a pair of very, very in this season, wide leg denim jeans. We're thinking about leather jackets. We're not thinking about a boho biker look. We're thinking about something slightly structured, but just warm and easy to wear and perfect to put on anything. That will be your leather blazer. Alternatively, how about a classic denim? This is pure California, girl next door, a relaxed, not too formal, not too stiff, couldn't really go to a corporate job in it, but what you could do is sit there with your wine and your mates and just completely relax. Wide leg jeans, another must. The wine that Jennifer and her friends will be drinking is, of course, a white wine. Crisp, fresh. This is the Napa Cellars Chardonnay. I can just imagine Jennifer and her mates sitting there drinking that. She will have her little jacket with her as well. Maybe put a little Breton under it, a plain t-shirt. She's all about the uncomplicated, the very sophisticated, and the very, very, very cool. Next up. Is she my favourite? She may well be. I love all three. But Gwen Stefani, the rock chick of California. She manages to put together styles. She manages to put together looks that you think, how does that actually work? But she pulls it off every time, and you can too. What does she wear most of? Well, the leather leggings. Do not be scared of them. Do not be scared of them. They're stretchy, they're flattering. Think Spanx in a pair of trousers. If, however, they're not quite what you're looking for, there is always an easier to wear version, and that is a coated skinny jean. What do you wear on top with that? Well, Gwen being the super rock chick that she is, obviously she's all about the slogan tee. Rock chick, obviously, but then there is a more sort of vintage style that she loves looking at, and you've also just got a little Papa was a Rolling Stone. You just can't get away from her rock credentials. The other thing that I think it's easy to maybe think about Gwen wearing, we're talking the glitz. She loves a bit of theatre. She loves a bit of dramatic, and this over leather leggings, over leather trousers, put it over your jeans. It just will make the complete difference to an outfit. But I'm saving the best for last. What I'm saving for last is actually the most incredible coat. Gwen and leopard are amazing. Now, unfortunately, she probably couldn't wear this where she is because it would be way too warm. But for us, this is the ideal, the ultimate Gwen coat. Now, what should you be drinking when you're wearing this? Well, I reckon that Gwen is very, very much a red wine. She is sophisticated, dark, sexy, warm. Definitely red wine for Gwen. And this dark horse pretty much sums her up perfectly. However, do not be worried if you think you're unable to pick your favourite Californian icon, because I have a cunning plan of how you can actually combine the three looks to make the perfect wardrobe for you. So whether you're a little bit of Gwen, whether you're a little bit of Zoe, whether you're all about the Jennifer Aniston, the Californian style really is a great combination of all three. Look, here we go. So first up, take a rock chick t-shirt. We will have one of these, thank you very much, Gwen. Then let's go for a vintage skirt. So we've got a vintage skirt from Zoe, and over the top of that, you put Jennifer's leather blazer. What you're doing is creating a California style that is sustainable and completely works for you. I'm actually already planning my wardrobe for next year when we finally are allowed to travel, and I am definitely heading off to Napa with my husband. He'll be so thrilled. It's a big wedding anniversary for us next year, so that is what we're doing, and I'm already starting packing now. We obviously haven't discussed the most important thing, who is my favourite style icon. That, I'm afraid, is very tricky for me to say because I adore all three. But what is much easier is for me to say which of these wines would I go for. And that would be Gwen. It's got to be the red. I love all three, do not get me wrong, but it would be the red. And this is the one that next year, planning ahead, when we are all finally let free and are allowed to travel, this is what I should be hunting down when I come to California, to the Napa Valley with my husband. California calling, here we come.
Right, the first icon wine I've got here is Schramsberg Sparkling Rosé 2016. Let's see if I can get it open without making an awful mess. Good so far. Hey! Now, Schramsberg is a wonderful wine, but it is not situated in a place that looks very promising for sparkling wine. It's in Calistoga, and Calistoga is in the warmest part of the Napa Valley. Ah, yes, but the winery is nestled into the base of the Diamond Mountain, and in 1870 the original owner dug caves deep into the mountains to provide ice-cold storage for making and maturing wine. And that's just like champagne in France. Now, a quarter of this wine is fermented in barrel. That's just to add a little bit of weight. And some of the Pinot Noir is fermented on its skins, and that's just to add a little bit of this light salmon pink colour. And the wine rests on its yeast lees for about 2 years, and that's just to add a little softness and a little creaminess. And the result, well, it's this delicious, foaming delight with its delicate strawberry and apple fruit. It's got a teasing acidity there, and the creaminess, it's just as though it holds a hint of saline sea breezes and just the slightest whiff of fresh leather. Let's move on to something else. Right, so the next bottle is Ridge 2017 Lytton Springs. Ridge. The very sight of that label will stir the heart of wine lovers anywhere in the world. Because Ridge isn't just revered in America as the embodiment of everything good and respectful and honest in California wine. Ridge is respected in every wine country, anywhere. And since Paul Draper began making Ridge wines in 1969, its reputation has never faltered. Now, Ridge have been making this wine, Lytton Springs, since 1972 from grapes grown in the Dry Creek Valley, and they've been making it in exactly the same way. Base it on vines that are now up to 120 years old. Use old Zinfandel as your core wine. It's about 3/4 of the wine here. But then do what they did in the old times. Make a field blend of whatever other grape varieties are growing in your field. Now we've got Petite Syrah here. That's a tough but beautifully scented old trooper. We've got Carignan. Carignan is the world's workhorse grape, but when the vines are old, it becomes magnificent. And we've got Mataro. Now, Mataro is a gorgeous old-time bruiser from eastern Spain. So now, you don't interfere with the fermentation. You age the wine in mostly old American oak barrels. You lay off the sulphur. You bottle it. It'll be lovely young. It'll be lovely old. Even now it smells of leather. It smells of sweet red fruit and old fading rose petals. So, that was good. What's next? Right, and my next wine is Silver Oak Cabernet Sauvignon 2016. I've been drinking and enjoying Silver Oak for at least 30 years. Now, there aren't many wineries that are started by a guy training to be a monk. And there aren't many monks who, when they're asked, what is your objective in life? They say, providing sheer pleasure. But Justin Meyer could do exactly that. He was training to be a monk when he co-founded Silver Oak with Ray Duncan in 1972. And unusually, he didn't focus on Napa Valley. he focused on the largely unknown Alexander Valley. Now that's just a few miles north through a wooded mountain pass. So Napa Valley Cabernet gave powerful, dense, impressive wine. But Alexander Valley Cabernet was richer, rounder, juicier, and they aged that then in creamy American oak barrels rather than the more austere French oak barrels that most other wineries used. And you get this. It's an absolute recipe for a hedonistic, lush marriage of spice and black chocolate and black cherries and olives and plums. Delicious. Well, I think that Justin Meyer would have approved of that. He's gone now, but I think he'd appreciate how the Duncans have kept his vision going and improved on it. Because Silver Oak, now, it isn't just about hedonism anymore. They have got 2,595 solar panels providing energy for the whole winery. They are the only manufacturing facility in the world to be awarded living building status. And the San Francisco Chronicle called them California's most eco-conscious winery. So, 3 icon wines you won't find better than these.
So Oz, you're going to love this one. This is a pan-fried fillet of beef with classic fried green tomatoes and a wonderful herb salsa. This dish inspires me so much from one of the greatest restaurants. In fact, probably, if you get asked what the greatest wine is in the world, I often get asked where the best food I've ever eaten in the world. Mine was in California. It was in a place called Single Thread in Sonoma. The greatest meal I've ever had in my life. And because it's run by a husband and wife team. He cooks in the kitchen. She creates this amazing garden and the most phenomenal produce. And I've got a little veg garden. And I'm a great believer, to fully understand and fully appreciate food, you've got to understand firstly how difficult it is to produce it. It's a bit like the wine. Yeah. It's a lot of work that goes in producing wine and producing food. But this synergy they've got between the farm and the restaurant works. That's why it's called the Single Thread. The greatest meal I've ever had in my life there.
And that's Sonoma County, isn't it?
Sonoma County. And then the second greatest was probably the French Laundry with Thomas Keller. So this is an inspiration of all these amazing chefs from California. The 2 in the north of California, but also the guy further south, Wolfgang Puck, Mr. California, really, when it comes to cooking. He taught me an amazing way to cook a piece of beef and a great tip at the end of it using a beef stock cube. It's a fantastic way, and I've done it ever since then. I do it in the restaurant, I do it at home, it's brilliant. But it all starts off with this amazing piece of beef. This is a fillet of beef, and I want to show you this. Very rarely do you get a fillet of beef to see it in its entire size like this, and this is a whole fillet of beef. This one, all I've done with this is just trim it off a little bit. You can trim off this little bit of sinew, wrap it up in cling film. It's a very chefy trick, this, Oz, but you wrap it in cling film and you leave it overnight. And what you end up with...
I thought it was a black pudding.
No, what you end up with is this. And then when you come to cut it, you end up with a perfect round piece of steak.
James,
it's all trickery, Oz. It's all trickery. Well, it is, but it's all trickery. And all you do is you just cut this up like that. And you've got these wonderful round steaks. And this is just cling film, all right? So you just trim it up all the way through, cut through like this. Then, very, very carefully, and it is carefully, you just trim off the cling film like that. And you can see the meat stays lovely and round. Now, it's really important whenever you're cooking steak, in fact, whenever you're cooking real meat anyway in general, just kind of bring it up to room temperature first.
Why is that?
Because you can see already this meat is quite loose.
Yeah.
So when it comes out of the fridge, it's hard. And when it's hard, it goes in the pan, it's hard. So it loosens the tendons in the meat, which is exactly what you want. So bringing it up to room temperature is kind of key, really.
And that will keep it tenderer in the mouth.
Much more tender, because particularly with a fillet, we cook this quite quickly. Quite simply, but quite quickly. And the way that we're going to do that, I'll just loo this to one side, is get a really, really hot pan. Now, this is the same thing as if you're doing it on a griddle. You can do this on a barbecue. The key to cooking on a barbecue is you always oil the meat, never the barbecue, because that way you want it to not stick, but you don't want too many flames. So always oil the produce, not the barbecue. If you're doing this on a griddle pan, similar to sort of doing it on this pan anyway, what you need to do is you start off with a simple oil that doesn't taste of anything. So I'm going to use a veg oil for this one in here. No olive oil because it'll burn, so we just use a little bit of veg oil. And then I'm going to show you this trick that the great Wolfgang Puck taught me. And he's got a chain of restaurants all over the world now, famous for cooking meat. And I think some of the best steak I've ever eaten was in his restaurant as well. You just basically pop it in a pan, no seasoning, no salt, no pepper. That comes afterwards. An extremely hot pan. And then what you do is you just leave it. Don't touch it, don't do anything with it. Just leave it and get a nice bit of colour on it first. And you can see it's nice and tender because you can just press it down like that to get its shape. But you want this colour first of all. You'll never get it by turning the pan up off a cool pan. You'll get it from a really hot pan to start off with. So keep it in there and get it nice and hot. Now, the key to this is don't turn it, because the minute you turn it over, you can't tell whether it's cooked in the middle. So treat it like a piece of fish, because we're going to just basically cook it on one side, almost all the way through on one side, and then turn it over and cook the rest of it on the other side. And then finish it off with something really special. But you've got a nice little bit of drink with this. We can have a drink while we cook along.
I can smell the beef now, and the one thing about smelling beef is you start thinking deep red wines, Cabernet Sauvignon.
Yeah.
So that's what I've got for you here.
I've
got this one from a guy called Louis M. Martini. Now, despite the name, it's a red wine producer. He's been one of the great red wine producers in the Napa Valley since 1933, just before Prohibition. Obviously, he got the word, Prohibition's going to be ended. He got his winery going, so that 1933 till now, he's been making famous Cabernet Sauvignon wines. And Cabernet Sauvignon, because it's dark, it's rich, it's chewy in the mouth, is always the first wine people think of as going with beef.
Yeah.
And Napa Valley, which is that beautiful valley running up from San Pablo Bay and San Francisco Bay, they've been saying for at least 20 years, we make the best Cabernet Sauvignon in the world. So at least I've got a bottle for us to see whether they do.
Exactly, and it is, like I was saying, a spectacular place. Not just on that coastline as you venture further up the north, but a little bit on land, that Sonoma way as well, from Napa, Sonoma. You know, that whole arc really, back round again, back into
all reaching down to San Francisco Bay.
But we've got a little bit of garlic in here. Touch of oil. Don't cook the garlic till it goes brown, otherwise it's going to go bitter. In we go with the fried green tomatoes. The only thing you want really is a little bit of fresh thyme and garlic, and let the flavour of the tomatoes come out. Really good quality olive oil, and you kind of gently cook them. We call this confit, and it's to cook with oil or to cook in fat really. That confit, that French technique, would be to cook in a little bit of duck fat, but the confit in oil. So don't be frightened to get a little bit more olive oil. And then this is when you can put your salt and pepper. Now I guarantee you, if you were doing this at home, you'd be tempted to turn that steak.
Yes, I've just been saying, I keep looking at those.
Leave it. This is really,
I can see the cooking working its way up from the bottom.
Well, you can see it. You can see it like that. See? Yeah. Now, only until you get to that stage, and this is when it's confidence more than anything else. Really good non-stick pan. This heat is as hot as it will possibly go. Get the pan extremely hot. Almost melt the pan while it's on there. Get it. If your net curtains are on smoke, that's when you want to be cooking your steak. You get it really, really hot.
Have you turned your smoke detector off?
Yes. Yeah, and open the doors. But do this outside. But this is ace. This gets me so excited because as a farmer, as I was a farmer, we were pig farmers. But like I said, you learn to appreciate good food, and by looking after it and taking care of this. But watch, this has been cooking for about sort of 3, maybe 4 minutes. This steak's going to take 3 to 4 minutes to cook anyway. If we turn this over, you see?
Absolutely beautiful.
You get this lovely colour there. And we do the same thing on the other side. And you can see it, look, you can see it cooking all the way up the side, look. Like that. But the most important bit is you just basically just leave this to cook. just in the oil. There's nothing else in there, just a little bit of
And
veg
you haven't
oil.
turned the heat down at all?
Haven't turned the heat down, nothing. You just let the tomatoes are cooked, they're done. You see they're just nicely confit. We'll take those to one side.
Now, you know the
Meanwhile-
Napa Valley, don't you?
I do know it so well.
Most of these vines are up in the hills.
Yeah.
On east and west side, and that means again, as the world gets warmer around us, up in the hills is cooler. So up in the hills is fresher fruit, and I
Yeah.
think this really shows in this. That it's rich. It's got loads of sort of black, spicy fruit to it, almost a slightly chocolatey richness to it. But when you've swallowed the wine, it's fresh in your mouth. It's not heavy. It's not thick. It's beautifully fresh. I like the sturdiness of this wine. I look at that beautiful dish you're making over there, and my mouth is longing to get some of that beef in there and see how this wine is just going to find its long lost friend.
Well, I think by combining this and the tomatoes, this is where it all starts to come together. In here, I've just got a little bit of garlic, a tiny bit, a touch of salt, and the salt really is basically to add a little bit of structure to it, but also to give it the ability to crush up. So you've got a little bit of basil in here, and with the basil you can strip the leaves off the basil as well. And then this is where I'm going to use a combination of basil and parsley. So think of this like a little salsa. Whenever you're making a little salsa like this, it's always advisable, if you can do it in a pestle and mortar, it produces a much better taste. I don't know why. You can use a blender, but it's not the same as doing as this. It's a bit like when you're making a proper pesto. Yeah. You've got to use a pestle and mortar and grind it all down. So the only thing in there is you've got a touch of garlic. Again, people would just be panicking at this point. But you can see why I don't add any salt and pepper to this. Because if the minute you add salt and pepper to this, it's going to burn the black pepper. Yeah. And B, the salt is just going to fall off anyway. So you can see it cooking away. If I lift this up now, you can see it's the same colour on the bottom as it is on the top. That's the colour that you want first of all, because it's just the finishing is really, really simple. So we're just basically just going to carry on with this and then show you how to finish this steak off. Because this is when you can test. You can do your thumb test, you press this. I don't think it needs to be any more than that. Then this moment in time, we do the opposite. We turn the heat off. All right? Turn the heat fully off, and then you take a little bit of butter.
Go and show us how little
And we need a little bit of butter.
Oh, just a little bit.
Because this is where we get the finishing off. Now this is where we can then season this. Black pepper. Nice pinch of salt. But this is the key. This is the key. You've got to thank Wolfgang Puck for this one. A beef stock cube. You'll ruin it and put a fish stock cube in it, but a beef stock cube over the top. You get this amazing umami hit from it.
That's amazing, because beef stock cubes always smell better than they taste when you've made a stock out of them. So you're getting the smell here.
Yeah, and look at the butter. And then this is where we finish it off. It's really crucial that you finish off steak like this. So this is how I based my training. This is how I did it. And literally based your training by basting this. And be it fish, scallops, meat, anything. We do the same thing with whatever we're cooking. Just keep basting and basting and basting it. This is the difference between having a good quality steak. And this is the difference between ones that I've had literally in California and all these amazing restaurants. It's this. It's the finishing as well as the produce. But look, you just keep going over the top. And then what you do is just turn the heat off and leave it. Don't do anything with it. Now I've only touched that once. All I've done is put it in the pan and turn it over. Done nothing else. Add a little bit of butter and we just leave that to one side. We can finish off our little salsa. So this is the one. So this has got the basil, it's got the garlic, a tiny little bit of salt, it's got the parsley, and then this is where we can add things like olives. Now, green olives, black olives, it's entirely up to you which one you put in, but you've got olives. Another thing California has got is olives. It's got great olive oil.
Californian black olives.
Yeah. So olives go in. Then we've got a nice little bit of capers. Now, capers, don't add any salted capers for this, just normal capers. If they're in a brine, make sure the brine's really well washed off and mix it all together like that. Just give it a crush. And you see, this is just quite happily sat there. Now, almost the same thing applies as we did when we started off the cooking, where we started it off at room temperature. The same thing we should be with a steak now. You should almost serve it at room temperature. So we've got a nice little bit. This is the umami bit, as well as this sort of stock cube. This is amazing. This is a little bit.
Hang on, that's gentleman's relish.
I know. This is my little bit. I'm bringing the UK to this Californian dish because this is the umami, this sort of anchovy paste that my granddad used to love on toast. And I remember tasting it for the first time. It's either love it or hate it. I absolutely loved it. And ever since then, I use it for a little bit of fish. I use it a little bit of salsas, tons of stuff like this. And if you mix all this lot together like that, you've got this nice little bit of salsa. Then we've got the fried green tomatoes. Then what you can do is take some fresh buffalo mozzarella. And we just take this mozzarella and just rip it up.
Is it only buffalo mozzarella which will break up properly like that?
Yeah, only buffalo mozzarella like that. And then what you do is take some really good Californian olive oil to bring this all together. A little bit of lemon. You can just use the juice for this. And this will create this wonderful rich dressing to go with it. And if you mix this all together, that is your nice little garnish for the steak. And then we're almost ready to serve it. So the steak is left like that. Just before you serve it, you can then take this butter and keep basting it as well, like that, over the top. So you get all that amazing flavour. And then we can simply plate this. So you grab a nice little bit of plate. You've got these beautiful tomatoes which are softened up. These nice little confit fried green tomatoes, which you can keep some of this oil as well if you wanted.
You smell it from here.
Lovely, aren't they?
Beautiful.
But they soften up. These are amazing on toast with a little bit of scrambled egg. Oh, delicious. But you just got a few of these tomatoes like that. And then we've got a nice piece of steak. Which one do you want? That one?
I'll take that one.
We'll go that one.
There's a bigger one I was thinking of asking
Well, I'm
for,
going to
but
cut that
I
one
thought-
up for you in a second. But look, then what you do is you take your salsa like that, and you put that on the top, and you allow the mozzarella and everything else just to sit there and have that with it. A little chefy drizzle of olive oil over the top.
I can absolutely imagine that in the Napa Valley. It's
I-
exactly the kind of thing.
Because when you
that
then
you'd
take
get.
this steak, and you will have the best meat you'll ever taste in your life if you go to these restaurants that we talked about, when we cut it straight through like that, you've then got the perfect way to cook it. It's not bad, though, is it?
Perfect. You've got that wonderful crispiness on the outside, almost blue in the centre, but not quite.
Cheers, boss.
Well done, James.
Thank you
I
very
have to
much.
say, that's an absolute smasher. I think this wine is going to just leap at that dish.
It's not bad, that, is it?
Well, that's it from California Calling. Thank you for joining us. To help you track down the wines we've tried today, all of the information is available on the event website.
Thank you to our presenters, Kat, Claire, Oz and James. They really knocked it out of the park. We hope they've excited and inspired you to try California wines. Let's all make our next wine a California one. Thank you and
Goodbye.